Hello, my name is Morgan Byrne, and I am the director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning here at Mount West Community and Technical College. In this module, you're going to be learning a lot about the basics of how to handle your courses, how to handle student engagement, meeting with your students and engaging with them that first week of class, a lot of the basics as it pertains to student learning, especially here at a community college. In this series of videos, we're going to be talking about some of the basics for navigating Blackboard Ultra. Whether you are totally new to Blackboard or you've been working with Ultra for a while and maybe just need a refresher, our hope here at the Cedal is that you can use this video to either refine your skills or start building them in the event that you need to create your own Blackboard shell. Now, if you are an adjunct or if you are new faculty, it's entirely possible that you have been given a master shell. In that master shell, you likely already have modules, folders, assignments, etc. But again, this is because you're at the beginning of this journey. Eventually, it will become time for you to create your own modules in your own course shells, and that is what this video is for. So in this video in particular, we're going to be talking about modules and documents, and a little bit about folders. There will also be text to accompany this lesson as well, so you don't have just this video. Now, first, let's start with definitions. So if we are looking at, for example, the new Faculty Academy course shell as it exists right now, you see 5 modules. We've got the essentials, so week 0, everything that you did before class got started. Student learning and engagement, which is where you find where we are right now. That's your instructional technology, the basics section. Assessment, advanced pedagogical lenses, and then finishing touches. So we can think of modules as the different sections or chunks of information that are going to be provided over the course of the semester. For example, in the context of something like an English course, there are 4 modules in my English courses when I teach them. I have creative writing as module 1, and that's usually about 3 weeks long. I have 4 weeks for rhetorical analysis, about 4 weeks for the annotated bibliography, and then the remaining weeks are for informative writing. So just like you see here on your screen, I've got a module for each one, and then everything the students need for that module, whether it be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or more, is located in that one location. And then when we move forward, I tell my students, okay, new unit, new module. We are moving forward. So modules are larger than something like a folder, for example, which are usually located within modules. I should note too that since we moved, and not just Mount West, but in general, most institutions have moved from Blackboard Learn to Blackboard Ultra. Ultra is not as folder friendly as Learn was. So in Learn, you could have folders inside folders inside folders. You can really only do that up to 2 or 3 times in Ultra. Ultra is very module heavy, as you will see here, and ultimately that's a lot easier for students. It's less clicks for them, less time for them to have to remember, oh, this is in this folder, and this is inside this folder, which is inside another folder. So it's all about accessibility and making things a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and start with talking about modules and how we create them. So again, you can see all of these examples here that are already there, but what if you're looking at a brand new course shell? How do you create one? The good news is, if you've ever played around with any kind of website creator, I'm talking Squarespace, WordPress, if you had a Tumblr or a MySpace growing up, if you've played around with anything like that, you can use Blackboard Ultra. Because if I go to this bar right here, which you will see in several different sections in Blackboard, I can go to the very top, any place underneath a module or an item that I have in this shell, I will see that line. And that line, when it turns purple and has that little plus icon, that means you can add something. So I'm going to hit this button and I'm going to hit create. Once I hit create, I'm going to be given a series of options, and I want to go ahead and again break these down one by one. We know about learning modules. That's your larger container. If we're thinking about this in the context of citations, a container in terms of citations, both in MLA, APA, Chicago, etc., is the larger piece of information. So a book, for example, whereas your chapter in that book is what's inside the container. Our folders, our documents, our links, very often, I would say most often, those exist inside. the modules. So the modules are those larger containers. We have our folders. Those folders are going to exist the same way they did in Learn in terms of holding those smaller bits of information. But again, you're not going to be able to have folders within folders within folders. It does have to be more streamlined. We have our individual documents, more on those later in this video. You can add in a link to YouTube, to a different site. You can add in teaching tools, or as we get a little bit further down, we can add in different kinds of assessment or ways to gain more participation and engagement. I can create a test. I can create an exercise or a form. Now, the word exercise is fairly broad, so let's say that you're looking at this and you teach sociology or English, a class where people are going to be submitting essays, and you are like, well, I don't do tests and I don't need forms and exercise is fairly nebulous. You will want the exercise button if your students are submitting essays. I will talk more about that in the other video about rubrics and grading, but exercise is going to be what you want. And then finally, discussion boards, journals, or an AI conversation. But again, this is just the basics, so we're going to start with learning module. If I click on that larger chunk of information, it will immediately populate wherever that line was. So you can see I clicked underneath student learning and engagement. So my new learning module is here. And over on your right-hand side, you will have the option to name it. So let's say that hypothetically, again, I am an English instructor and I am adding in a rhetorical analysis module. I would type in my title, which will immediately populate over here on your main Blackboard page. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's visible to learners. You do have to manually select that to make sure students can see it. And then here, I can add a description. So what can students expect throughout this module? In the examples you see here in the New Faculty Academy, you've got a sentence or two that describes everything we are going to do for those weeks. So for example, for student learning and engagement, we have in this module, we'll talk strategies for teaching community college students, engaging online students, and best practices for instruction. It's good to do that for students too. If I were to write a description for the rhetorical analysis module, I might say something like, in this module, we will define the primary forms of rhetorical analysis or rhetorical appeals, ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos. We will discuss elements of visual rhetoric, and we will discuss the rhetorical analysis essay. So that's kind of just an overarching idea of what that module would look like. We don't need to get into the nitty-gritty parts, but students should understand what's coming. It also really helps them to then connect what it is that they're seeing in the modules and how that aligns with the outcomes that are listed on the syllabus. But don't feel like your description has to be crazy. One sentence is fine. And then the other big thing I want to note here is the image. You'll notice that I skipped Advance in Sequence. It reads that learners can access this module's content in a sequence. And that means that they can't skip ahead. They have to do everything else first. So the sequence is locked in that case. I don't recommend that for the first time that you're using Blackboard Ultra. When you eventually get to a point where you're super familiar with it and you want to do forced sequences, you can. But for right now, again, we're just focusing on the basics. The other option down here is to add an image. You do not have to do this, but I highly, highly recommend it. I mean, look how cute this course shell is. All of my English courses also have images associated with their modules. If you are looking at adding an image to your module, I cannot recommend Unsplash enough. You can also go to Creative Commons. There are several different places to get images to use for these modules, but that is going to be how we create that. So I'm going to just add a quick little placeholder here for my description, and I'm going to hit save, which means ta-da, we now have our new learning module, which once we have that, I can click on the title and I can add other things within it. So let's say, hypothetically, again, this is a rhetorical analysis module, I will need a section about my assignments, right? If I'm going to do that, I'm going to hit this purple bar and hit create. And I've got a couple different options. Some of this is going to be up to the instructor. For example, if this had been in Learn, I would create a folder, and that folder would have the assignment sheet, several different examples, and the rubric. However, in Ultra, where the goal is to be a little bit more streamlined, to embed things in the same location, I would pick document instead. You can think of a document as being kind of similar to the traditional sense, so a page that contains information, but it's not just a Word document, for example. You're not just working with text. So let me show you what I mean. If I select document, so I have my document here within my module, and let's say that I do want this to be assignment information. I'm going to name it just like I did previously, and I'm going to make sure it's visible to learners. And then you'll notice I've got a lot of different options here within my text box. I can add content, which is going to bring me to a formal text box. I can change the size of my font if I want to be bold, italicized, underlined, etc. I can change my font a little bit if I want to. I don't recommend deviating from Open Sans or Times New Roman just for readability. And I do also, if we're talking about things I do recommend, using size 18 font at the minimum. And you'll see that in the example I'm going to show you in a moment. But you can do some other things too. For example, let's say that we want to go ahead and add in that assignment sheet. You can copy and paste it into this section and make sure that it's 18 or 24 size font so people can read it really easily. Or you can create a link. You can add in that link to your Google document where the assignment sheet is available. Or you can add in an attachment. So let's say that, and it's not, this is a PDF for something else, and generally speaking, we really don't want PDFs in Blackboard right now. So let's pick something else, actually. Let's say that this, right here, this flyer is the document that I am looking for. I can select it, and boop. Now this picture is here in Blackboard. So if I want to add images, if I want to add Word documents, I can, just using this paperclip icon. I can also, if I want to focus on images specifically, I can select image, or I can go to this plus button, and this is where we get even more stuff. The biggest one I want to note is the YouTube video option. So let's say that, hypothetically, you've got your assignment sheet, but there's also a video where you walk through the assignment sheet, and you want to embed that here in Blackboard. You're going to hit that YouTube video button. You're going to copy the link from YouTube into this search bar, and then you're going to hit search. And once you do that, the video you're looking for will pop up right here. You'll select it, and it will be embedded in your document. So everything can be right here. Makes it super easy. Students can access everything they need right in this section. Now, I'm going to show you what this looks like in a completed course. So if I leave our New Faculty Academy, and you'll notice that all of my courses say closed. I am not currently teaching right now. But if I go into my English 101 course, you can see I have my individual modules again. Creative writing, rhetorical analysis, conducting research, and then informative writing. If I want to look at rhetorical analysis, because that was the example we were using, I've got a couple different things here. Now you'll notice I have documents, and I also have folders. The document with major assignment information includes, in bold, links directly to the learning outcomes. So how does what we're doing here actually relate to what's in the syllabus? I'm all about alignment all the time. I talk about the assignments they're going to complete during this module. I give them a list of some things that they can expect, and then we get into the essay itself. I have a quick write-up of how the assignment works. I have a link to our assignment sheet, a link to video instructions, a link to the rubric, and then 2 different student examples. And all the students have to do is click on that document and it appears right here. They can also make it bigger if they want to, or they can download it outright. This way, they don't have to go into several different folders just to locate all of this stuff. It's right here all the time. And based on feedback I've received from students, they like this. They like having everything in one place. However, When I am teaching, I always make it such that any student that is taking an in-person class with me, they can also access the online content too. You never know when somebody's going to have a crisis or if somebody's going to get sick. And while I do record any courses I'm doing live remote or flex, those courses that are just in person don't naturally have those recordings, so I save them. So in my lesson materials folder, I have rhetorical appeals and visual rhetoric, crucial essay components, and analysis versus informative writing. These are broken up into a couple different lessons. And when we click on one, we can see that within these documents, well, one, you can see that I'm a bit of a nerd, but also a lot of my focus is in thinking about rhetorical analysis, not just as what happens in the classroom, but how it applies outside of it as well. So I explained, here's what's happening this week, talking about these rhetorical appeals, and then I have links to the slides that I use, and a video lecture of me going over those concepts. I also have notes of what readings should be done with these individual lessons. This way, if a student is looking at the schedule and they see, well, I'm not going to be here today, but I know we're talking about rhetorical appeals in class, they can just go to this section and click on the Google Slides. If they click on that link, it takes them right here to everything that we are doing. And you can see from this thumbnail that my classes get a little wild. But this setup really, really helps. Now, do you have to get into adding images and stuff like that right out of the gate? Absolutely not. But I do recommend doing so. And it is pretty simple. For example, let's go ahead and go back to the New Faculty Academy. And we'll go back into our module and we'll open our document. Let's say that we want to treat this in the same way as the example you just saw. What you're going to do is you're going to hit content. And if you want those columns like you saw, writing on one side, image on the other, all we're going to do is we're going to drag our text box. Boop. And there we go. Now I can add, I'm going to keyboard smash here. I can add whatever I want over here. And if I want to add an image, I'm just going to hit content, drag this over here, and then I can add in my image on this side. Now you'll notice that it does not default to having them right next to each other. This can easily be fixed. You're just going to click on this box, click on these 6 buttons or little dots right here, hover over change row, move to row above, and then ta-da! You have 2 different columns. Again, not required, especially if you're just now getting used to Blackboard Ultra, but not to toot my own horn, I think my courses are pretty cute. And the more visually appealing it is, we know the more engaged students will be. We do want to prioritize accessibility. You don't want to add in so much stuff that it's buried, that all of the stuff your students need is beneath these gigantic images and things of that nature. We do still want to make sure that things are always germane to what we're doing, but having those little touches does help to make it a little bit more engaging for the students, which is something that they want. It's something that you want. I always advocate for instructors to think about what they enjoy doing. If you're having fun, it's a lot more likely that the students are going to have fun. And I think that fun can definitely be incorporated here in Blackboard too. Now, some of this is a little bit more advanced. These are, of course, optional. When you hover over one of your text boxes, you'll notice this paint palette shows up. When you select that paint palette, and the others mean exactly what you imagine they mean. This is to delete it, this is to move it, this is to edit. You can change a text box to be a question text box, and then you can add in a question right here next to the question mark that it added for you. Let's say you want to do a little Q&A with students. This is a great way to do it. That way, you've got a visual representation of the question before you even get to the text. We can change it to being a tip. So if you want to give advice, maybe you want to highlight something really important from the text the students were reading, you can hit that tip option and ta-da, now we have this little light bulb. We can do key points, which turns it into a push pin, or next steps. Let's say that they're at the very end of the document, they've read all of their assignment information, and maybe this is an online class. They're not going to see you in person. And you want to indicate that, all right, you've read everything in the major assignment information, time to move on to lesson blank, whatever is next. You can include that right here next to these arrows that will intuit them to move on to the next lesson. So again, all of this is embedded right here in Blackboard Ultra. Super, super fun to use. Now, in this video, again, I really am only focusing on documents and modules and how to create them and showing off some of those examples. If you have questions about how to utilize these tools in Blackboard Ultra, the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning is always happy to help. You can always email us at CETL, CETL, at mctc.edu, or you can go to our online oversight committee or reach out to Marshall University's instructional design team. We share services with them, and they would be happy to help you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again in the next one.